Let's dive into one of the most powerful and, honestly, one of the most relatable stories you'll ever find, the journey of Naomi. It's a story that starts with a woman so completely broken that she actually renames herself bitter, but it ends in a place that, well, nobody could have seen coming. Okay, to really get a feel for Naomi, we have to start right here, with this raw, unfiltered cry of pain. You see, her name, Naomi, means pleasant, but she gets to a point where she just says, "Don't call me that, call me Mara," which means bitter. And this isn't just, having a bad day. This is her completely redefining her entire identity based on the pain she believes God has inflicted on her. So what on earth could happen to a person to make them do that? To literally ask people to call them bitter? Well, her story is one of tragedy piled on top of tragedy, of being completely and totally emptied out. Let's walk through exactly what she lost. First off, it all starts with being uprooted. There's a huge famine, and it forces Naomi, her husband, and their two sons to pack up and leave their home in Bethlehem, which ironically means house of bread, and go live as foreigners in Moab. I mean, they're forced to leave everything they've ever known just to find food. And then, while they're in this foreign land, tragedy hits. Naomi's husband dies. Now, you have to understand, back then, for a woman to lose her husband, that's just catastrophic. She's now a widow in a country that's not her own, with no real protection or way to provide for herself. And just when you think it can't get any worse, it does. Her two sons, who had since gotten married, they die too. So now think about it. She's a widow. She's childless. She has no male heirs to carry on the family name or to secure her future. She is completely, utterly alone. So yeah, when she finally makes it back to her hometown, you can totally see why she pushes back on her old name. The women of the town see her and they say, "Is that Naomi?" And she just lays it all out there. She says God brought her back empty. That name, Pleasant, must have felt like a sick joke. She says, "I'm not Naomi anymore. I am Mara. I am bitter." But right here, in this rock-bottom moment of bitterness, something really important happens. Naomi makes a choice. It's not some loud, dramatic declaration of faith. It's this quiet, tough, gritty decision to just move. But here's something you've got to catch. Even as she's blaming God for making her life so bitter, she still calls him the Almighty. Think about that. She's mad at God, she thinks he's against her, but she hasn't lost her belief in his power. She's still talking to him, even if it's a conversation filled with pain. So she makes a choice. She hears there's food back in Bethlehem, and she decides to go home. And look, this isn't some big, heroic leap of faith. It's just one small, difficult step. She's moving away from the place where she lost everything, and she's heading back toward the place that represents God's provision. It's a choice to turn her face back toward God, even when she feels like he's completely turned his back on her. And this is where the story gets really interesting, because Naomi, who's still hurting, still bitter, right? She starts to become a mentor to her daughter-in-law, Ruth, the one who so loyally decided to come back with her. That kind of makes you stop and think, right? How can you guide someone else when you feel like you have absolutely nothing left in the tank? But what Naomi's story shows us is that being a mentor isn't about having it all figured out or being perfectly healed. And you can see this mentorship happen in stages. At first, when Ruth just tries to find them some food, Naomi just blesses her efforts. But then, when Ruth comes back from the field of a man named Boaz, who happens to be a relative, it's like a light bulb goes off for Naomi. She sees God's hand in it. And right there, she switches from just grieving to actively guiding. She teaches Ruth the local rules, the customs, and points her straight to Boaz, this guy who's a kinsman redeemer, basically the one person who could turn their whole situation around. So through this messy, imperfect advice that comes straight from her own pain, Naomi actually starts a chain reaction, a series of events that will lead to her own incredible restoration. The woman who called herself bitter is about to be called blessed. So let's map this out. Look at her journey. She starts out totally empty, calling herself Mara. Then, as she starts guiding Ruth, you see this little flicker of hope when she realizes God might be up to something. And it all leads to this incredible moment. She's holding her grandson, Obed, the son of Ruth and Boaz. Her family line isn't gone. Her legacy is back. And get this. The very same women who heard her bitter complaint when she arrived are now the ones speaking this amazing blessing over her.
And they tell her that her daughter-in-law, Ruth, is better to her than 7 sons, which, in that culture, was like the ultimate symbol of security and blessing. The woman who came back with nothing is now being told she has everything that truly matters.
So what is it about this story? Why does it still hit so hard all these years later? It's because it's just jam-packed with these timeless lessons about faith, about grief, and about God's unseen work in our lives. All right, so what can we pull from all this? First, being brutally honest with God about your pain isn't a lack of faith. It can actually be a deep expression of it. Second, faith isn't always a giant leap. Sometimes it's just putting one foot in front of the other when you feel like you have nothing left. Third, our pain doesn't disqualify us from helping people. In fact, God loves to use imperfect, hurting people to guide others. And finally, God can take our bitterest seasons and somehow, behind the scenes, turn them into a beautiful story of redemption. And that really leaves us with a big question to chew on. Naomi was absolutely convinced her story was over. She looked at her empty life and thought, this is the end. But it turned out that her emptiness was the exact place where a whole new story of redemption was about to be written. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Where in your own life, in those places that feel empty, could a new story be waiting to start?